best friend asked me to be maid of honor, but at the rehearsal dinner I learned she had been secretly dating my ex-fiancé for months, and everyone else knew except me, making me question whether our entire friendship had always been fake. I'm 24F, living in Chicago now, but I grew up in a small suburb in Indiana. My family is low-key, middle-of-the-road folks. My mom, Linda, is 55, always cooking and stressing about things that aren't that important, and my dad, Mark, is 58, the kind of guy who's laid back but always a bit distracted by work. I also have a younger brother, Alex, 22, who's smart, clever, and far more confident than I'll ever be. I met my best friend Caitlin when I was 15, and I guess we just clicked immediately because we were both nerdy, both the smart but invisible type at school. Caitlin is 25 now, a year older than me, and from the outside, her life is perfect. She's gorgeous, confident, charismatic, and everyone appears to love her. But as I've learned over the years, perfect is most likely a facade. I met my ex-fiancé, Ethan, when I was 20, at a mutual friend's party. He was 26, charming in the kind of way that hurts your chest, with a smile that you forgot to breathe for a moment. We fell quickly in love in a whirlwind romance. He proposed when I was 22, and then I thought it was everything I had wanted. Our engagement went on for nearly 2 years before cracks began to show. Not tiny cracks, but big, jagged ones. Ethan was doing finance, long hours, and I was trying to finish grad school while holding down a part-time job, and slowly our universes just stopped aligning. The night that we broke up, I wept like my heart had been ripped apart. I was completely alone, other than Caitlin, who was there, sitting on my couch, letting me fall apart on her shoulder. She embraced me and said, "You're better off, I swear." I knew that she was right. That was the moment when I knew that our friendship could never be severed. Flash forward to this year, when Caitlin rang me up out of the blue and invited me to be her maid of honor. She's 25 now, but in that moment, it was just like we were 16 again, exchanging secrets and inside jokes that no one else could possibly understand. I was honored, of course. I accepted immediately, imagining the wedding dress fittings, the bridal shower, and all the little moments of tears and laughter. I even started helping her pick out bridesmaid dresses and suggest decor, letting myself believe this was going to be a happy, whole celebration. And then there was the rehearsal dinner. Caitlin had invited all of our friends, all of our family, and, as it turned out, my ex-fiancé Ethan, whom I'd hoped was staying far away, out of the city, because I hadn't expected to see him. I walked in, and instantly felt a strange tension, like everyone was holding their breath in anticipation. There was muted whispering and giggling from corners. I tried to ignore it, assuming that I was paranoid. And that's when I spotted them, Caitlin and Ethan, sitting together, whispering, hands brushing against each other on the table, laughing at some private joke. My stomach dropped. I tried to convince myself at first that I was hallucinating. Perhaps my eyes were playing tricks on me. But then I noticed they weren't just talking. They were leaning in, smiling in that way that couples smiled. And the worst part? Everyone else noticed. I could see the glances my coworkers were exchanging, the knowing smiles of Caitlin's family members, the smug little smile from her sister, Maddie. I wanted to run, scream, cry, anything. But I just stood there, gripping my wine glass so tightly I feared it might shatter. I locked eyes with Caitlin, and she waved to me as if everything was fine, as if nothing was happening. But my world had tilted. Everything I knew about our friendship, everything I thought I believed in, was crumbling to dust. Why had she not said anything? For how long had this been going on? And most of all, how was she sitting there, acting like this was not a betrayal? I remember stumbling to the bathroom, grabbing onto the sink, trying to breathe, my reflection staring back at me, pale and stunned. I couldn't help but ask myself, was our friendship ever real? All the memories, sleepovers, secrets, late-night heart-to-hearts, suddenly felt like a place she had been watching me act in while harboring this huge secret. And it wasn't just the shock, it was the humiliation. Everyone knew but me. The person I trusted most, my best friend, had kept this from me while smiling in my face for months. I lingered in the bathroom for longer than necessary, reminding myself that I needed to calm down before I went out there and made a scene. But I couldn't help but wonder about all the time she must have spent with Ethan while feigning support after we broke up. Did she have a thing for him before we were even broken up? Did she care about me at all? My hands were shaking when I returned to the room. I tried to play it cool, to laugh at the jokes and sip my wine, but the room felt suffocating. Ethan caught my eye for a fleeting second and looked away quickly, probably because he realized I'd seen too much. Caitlin approached me afterwards, smiling in that irritating, perfect way, and said, "You okay? Aren't you excited about the wedding?" I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the wine in her face. Instead, I pretended to laugh and nodded, pretending my chest wasn't breaking into a million pieces. The rest of the night was a blur, smiles, toasts, clinking glasses. But inside, I was falling apart. When I got home, I couldn't sleep. I relived all of my encounters with Caitlin in my mind, searching for signs, attempting to convince myself that this was not as awful as it appeared. But inwardly I knew that my entire concept of trust, of friendship, of loyalty, had been shattered. And it was not even just Ethan, it was about her, choosing to lie to me, to savor my pain, and to parade her secret in front of the world while I sat unaware. I felt like I had aged decades in the span of a few hours, like all the inside jokes, all the shared tears, all the whispered secrets had been tainted by this secret betrayal. I wanted to call her, to demand an explanation, but I also didn't, because if I phoned, if I confronted her, it would be admitting that I had watched it all, that I had known, and I wasn't ready to have that conversation. I didn't know if I ever would be, and then I realized the problem wasn't Caitlin or Ethan. It was everyone else, the way the world was somehow complicit in it, silently agreeing that I'd be left in the dark. That was more infuriating than anything. My best friend, my so-called confidant, had chosen to put me last, to withhold the truth from me, to make me question everything I thought I knew about her and our friendship. And I wasn't sure if I'd ever be able to look at her in the same way again. I didn't know if I could forgive her, forgive myself for missing the signs, for trusting too much, for believing in something that had never really been what I thought it was. I stayed up all night scrolling through old photographs, laughing at what now seemed like deceptions, wondering how many smiles, how many tears, how many promises had been performed for the audience of her amusement. And I sat in bed, staring at the ceiling, and realized something terrible. This was not so much an issue of betrayal, but an issue of realizing that sometimes the people you love and trust the most will hurt you in ways you never imagined possible. And the worst thing is realizing that the truth is always worse than any lie you may have imagined. The next morning, I woke up and felt like I hadn't slept. My Chicago apartment was smaller, more suffocating, as if the walls had been closing in on me overnight. I'm 28F now, and I work at a small publishing house downtown, which generally keeps my mind busy enough to forget about things like betrayal and heartbreak. But today, nothing could distract me from it. I couldn't quit reliving Caitlin and Ethan at the rehearsal dinner, laughing, the way their hands had brushed across the table as though the rest of the world wasn't even there. I was trying to figure out how everyone had known, my parents, my friends at work, even her family had seen it, and I hadn't. It felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me and I was just suspended in the cold. My phone vibrated on the nightstand. A text from Caitlin, Amir. "Hey, hope you slept okay. Can't wait for tomorrow." I scowled at it, my thumb resting over the screen, debating whether to respond. I could not bring myself to type anything. I did not know whether I wanted to scream at her, demand an explanation from her, or just disappear. I went into the kitchen, trying to make coffee, but my hands couldn't stop shaking, spilling grounds on the counter. I tried to remember the Caitlin I'd known when we were up growing up, the one who'd comforted me through breakups, the one I knew I could trust with my life. And then it hit me. Had I ever really known her? Or was I only seeing the version of her that she wanted me to see? I recalled our last vacation together, a weekend in New Orleans when I was 26, and how she'd seemed so genuinely excited about exploring the French Quarter. But then I remembered the furtive glances she'd been shooting Ethan's way during that period, the way she would, accidentally, message him when we were all spending time together in a cafe. I didn't catch on at the time. I didn't think anything, and now it all fell into place. Or maybe it fell too well into place. I wanted to hate her, but part of me hated myself more, for loving too much, trusting too much, letting someone in and having them flip my world without even knowing. That afternoon, I forced myself to go to work, to sit at my desk and stare at manuscripts, pretending the world hadn't just tipped on its axis. My coworker, Jenna, 32F, sensed it immediately. "You okay?" she asked, her voice low, cautious. I shook my head, understanding that I couldn't explain, couldn't even begin to find the words for the tornado of feelings swirling inside me. I said, "Yeah, just tired," and she nodded, not pushing. She didn't need to know, and I wasn't ready to tell anyone. By night, I couldn't hold it in any longer. I walked for a long time around the lake, letting the wind blow into my face, hoping it would clear my head. It didn't. I couldn't get Caitlin's face out of my mind, how peaceful she had been, how normal, as if nothing had happened. And Ethan, God, Ethan, the guy I'd once pictured a life with, who'd promised forever to me, there with my best friend like I didn't exist. I passed by couples laughing on the promenade, friends sharing bottles of wine, and each happy moment was like a knife twisting in my chest. I sent a text to Alex, my brother, now age 30, a bit older and wiser than I, a person I trust more than almost anyone. "Can we talk?" I wrote. A few minutes later he called. "Hey," he said, worry already present in his voice. "You sound off. What's wrong?" I wasn't sure where to start. How do you explain the fact that your best friend is going out with your ex-fiancé behind your back when everybody else knew and you're sitting here pretending like you're a normal human being? So I didn't start with Caitlin or Ethan. I started with the feelings. I feel betrayed, I said finally, voice cracking. Like, everything I thought I knew, everything I trusted, it was just wrong. He was quiet for a long while, and then he said, "Do you want me to come over?" I nodded immediately, even though he couldn't see me. An hour later he was there, entering my apartment with that calm presence that always made me feel safer, like I could breathe again. I had poured 2 glasses of wine, but we didn't drink much. We just sat in silence, the kind of silence that doesn't need to be filled with words, because sometimes words only make things worse. Finally, I told him everything, every detail of the rehearsal dinner, every whispered look, every gut-wrenching suspicion that my friendship had perhaps been a lie from the very start. Alex listened, nodding, asking soft questions, never interrupting. When I finished, I buried my face in my hands thinking about all of the memories that were now potentially tarnished. I don't know what to do, I admitted, voice muffled against my hands. I don't know if I can look at her, if I can look at anyone, if I can ever trust anyone again. He held me tightly. You're supposed to feel this way, he said. You're entitled to be angry, hurt, confused, and you're entitled to take the time to work out what comes next. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. I hardly slept that night, tossing and turning, thinking about Caitlin, thinking about Ethan, thinking about trust, and wondering if my whole understanding of people was just naive. Yet in the darkness there was also a strange clarity emerging. I knew that if I was ever going to heal, I had to confront this. Not in anger, not in vengeance, but in understanding. I needed answers, and I needed to know whether our friendship had been worth saving, or whether it had been a lie from the start. And worst of all, I had to accept that even if I did confront her, even if I pleaded for the truth, there was no guarantee it would feel like closure. Sometimes betrayal doesn't tie up neatly. Sometimes it just is, shaping your life in tiny, painful ways. I dodged Caitlin the next day, skipping the bridal shop appointment, pretending busyness at work. Every message from her tightened my chest. My phone buzzed with messages from mutual friends, asking if I was okay, and I responded with short, polite messages that did not begin to encompass the depth of my despair. I looked around at the world whirling around me, couples walking hand in hand, strangers laughing, and wondered when I would be normal again. Then Alex and I went out to get a late dinner, just the 2 of us. In between slices of greasy pizza and sips of soda, I laughed for the first time in hours, not because I was any better, but because I could finally see the humor in it all. Life has a way of twisting in ways you don't anticipate, I thought, and sometimes the ones you most trust are the ones who hurt you the most. And yet, even as I laughed, some part of me was plotting to how I would confront Caitlin, how I would get the answers that I so desperately sought, how I would reclaim my sense of self amidst the chaos. I did not know when or how, but I knew that I could not put it off any longer. I couldn't maintain the pretense of my heart not breaking as the world continued, unaware of my suffering. And as Alex drove me home that night, the wind whipping through the city streets, I made a silent promise to myself. I would confront the truth. I would demand honesty, and no matter how it ended, I would survive it, because I was stronger than I had allowed myself to be. A few days later, I was 26F, and the wedding was only 2 weeks away. I couldn't avoid Caitlin forever. I practiced over and over in my head how I would confront her, whether I would scream, cry, or just ask quietly, begging for the truth. But each option made me more terrified than the previous one. I finally relented to meet her at a charming cafe in Lincoln Park, the kind of place we used to go when we were teenagers, sipping iced coffees and talking boys and college and life plans that now felt so far removed. She arrived gorgeous, as always, perfectly dressed, with her hair spilling down her shoulders, and I had to fight not to look away. Caitlin is 27 now, and I couldn't match the girl I knew with the woman sitting opposite me, smiling as though nothing had happened. "Hey," she said, her voice airy casual, like this was just any other coffee date. I felt my stomach churn, like it had been tied up overnight. "Hey," I said, my voice strained. I couldn't meet her eyes at first, so I focused on the condensation on my glass. I took a breath after a moment. "Caitlin, we need to talk. About Ethan." Her face changed somewhat, a glimmer of something I couldn't quite identify. Guilt, maybe, or maybe annoyance. She sipped her coffee, eyes avoiding mine. "Okay," she said finally. "What about him?" I couldn't believe the calmness, the ease with which she said it. Like this wasn't the apocalypse of my trust in front of me. "You've been seeing him," I said, struggling to keep my voice level. "At the rehearsal dinner, I saw you. Everyone knew, everyone except me. How long has this been going on?" Her eyes finally met mine, and there was a silence, long and heavy. She leaned back, almost looking bored, and said, "It's complicated." Complicated. The word was like a punch to the chest. Complicated? Caitlin, this isn't a trivial misunderstanding. This is betrayal. You knew how much he meant to me. How could you? How could you let me believe you were my friend while this was happening? She sighed, finally looking genuinely uncomfortable. I didn't mean for it to go down like this. I never meant to hurt you. It just did, and I didn't know how to tell you without making everything worse. I wanted to throw the coffee in her face, to scream, to break something. But instead I just sat there, staring, trying to make sense of the words that didn't make sense. Worse? I ordered, voice trembling. Do you know how that feels? To find out the person you trusted more than anyone in the world has been hiding something like this? To find out all the people you thought you could trust knew, and you were the last one to find out. She held out her hand, palm up beside mine, but I pulled away reflexively. I know it's terrible, she said softly. I am unable to change that. I cannot take it back. I could feel my chest collapsing in on itself. So, what am I supposed to do? Act like this never happened? Be your maid of honor like everything's okay? Her eyes flashed with guilt, but she did not speak immediately. I waited, each passing second taking forever. Finally, she whispered, I do not expect you to forgive me immediately, or ever. I just wanted you to know the truth before the wedding. That's all I can do. And in that moment I knew that this wasn't just about Ethan, or even Caitlin. It was about trust, about friendship, about the thin line between love and betrayal. I knew I had a decision to make. Let this destroy me, or learn to survive it, even if it meant cutting her out of my life completely. We didn't speak again after that, the cafe around us buzzing with the laughter and chatter of strangers, and I couldn't help but feel more alone than I ever had, even with her sitting right beside me. Later, as I was walking home, I called Alex, my lifeline amidst all this craziness. I confronted her. I whispered, the words barely audible. She didn't exactly apologize, she just explained. He was quiet on the other side of the line, letting me speak. And, I said finally, and I don't know what to do. I don't know if I can trust her. I don't know if I ever can. Alex's tone was even, calm, exactly what I needed. Then don't decide yet. Step back. Protect yourself first. You'll know when you're ready. In the days that followed, I tried to focus on myself. I avoided wedding planning, ignored calls from mutual friends, and spent time alone, reading, walking, and writing in my journal. I realized that what Caitlin did forced me to confront something I never had. How much I relied on someone else for validation, for support, for emotional safety, and how dangerous it is to rely on someone else completely, without boundaries. On my wedding day, I made a decision. I would attend, not as a pawn in her game, not as an actor in her neatly scripted life, but as myself. I put on a navy blue dress, simple and elegant, nothing too flashy, and arrived early, sitting in the back where I could observe without being the center of attention. Caitlin approached me, radiant in her dress, and for a moment I felt a flicker of the old friendship, the intimacy of laughter, late-night talks, and plans for the future, but only for a moment. She smiled at me, wary, and I smiled back, tight and polite. I didn't hug her, didn't touch her, didn't pretend everything was okay. And in that moment, I realized that maybe the friendship I thought I'd never known, or maybe it had, and it had changed, and people change in ways that leave you behind. Either way, I was going to remain intact, protect my own heart, and reclaim the parts of myself that had been shaken by betrayal. As the ceremony began, I watched Caitlin and Ethan exchange their vows, beaming with happiness, and I felt a mixed bag of emotions, anger, sadness, but a strange sense of freedom as well. I had survived the betrayal, I had embraced the reality, and although I didn't know if I would ever be able to forgive Caitlin, I knew that I was stronger for having survived it, and that my life was mine to live, no matter what anyone else chose. And for the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of peace. By the time the reception began, I was 30F and had decided to fully emotionally detach myself from Caitlin, if only for my sanity's sake. I watched her dance with Ethan, twirling and laughing, the kind of laughter that used to be real when it was with me. I found myself having to remind myself that it no longer had anything to do with her happiness. It had to do with mine. I had learned, in a hurtful manner, that the same individuals you trust most will be the ones who will hurt you more than your worst nightmare, and no common history or memory could erase that reality. I sat silently at the far end of the table for most of the evening with a small, close group of friends and colleagues and sipped sparkling water, attempting to ignore the furtive looks and whispers that continued to float in the air, the same ones I'd sensed at the rehearsal dinner. My phone buzzed a few times, messages from mutual friends inquiring if I was doing okay. I replied courteously, keeping it brief, not wishing anyone to witness the depth of the tempest still brewing inside me. Somewhere along the way, Ethan made his way over to talk to me. He was awkward, not knowing whether to apologize or simply to leave me alone. I studied his face, the once known smile now twisted with guilt and discomfort. I didn't think you'd come," he stammered. I composed myself, even as the storm surged inside. "I came, of course," I said. "I had to see it through. I had to see how it turned out." He nodded silently, his eyes downcast, and I knew that the man I had loved, the man I had envisioned a future with, was now a person I could barely identify. Caitlin stopped by later, leaning in close to me and whispering, "I know things are weird. I just hope someday you can forgive me." I looked at her, really looked at her, and didn't see the girl I'd grown up with, didn't see the friend I'd poured my heart out to, but someone who'd knowingly tried to hurt me and keep it a secret for months. My chest ached, yet I knew forgiveness was not for her. It was for me, to let go of the anger and reclaim my peace. "I don't know if I can forgive you," I acquiesced softly, voice steady, although my heart was hurting. "Maybe someday. But for now, I need to look after myself." And in that moment I knew how far I'd traveled with this betrayal. I had weathered the worst of friendship and trust, had handled lies that cut to the heart, and had come out intact, resilient, more cognizant. I spent the rest of the night watching, reflecting, and letting the night wash over me, understanding happiness wasn't dependent on other people or their choices, but on how I chose to manage the repercussions of what they did. By the end of the night, I felt a sense of subdued freedom. When I stepped out of the reception hall, cool night air washing over my face, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. I wasn't angry anymore, not fully. I wasn't bitter, not fully. I'd accepted that life could be cruel, people could be treacherous, and friendships could shatter in ways you never expect. But I also knew that I had lived through it. I had faced it. I had reclaimed my sense of self. And while Caitlin would go forward with her life, her choices, and her carefully controlled relationships, I would go forward with mine, older, more guarded, but liberated. Weeks afterward, I saw Alex for coffee again. He smiled knowingly as I recounted the aftermath, the veiled exchanges, the lingering feelings. "You're different," he said, "stronger. You've grown because of this, even though it hurt." I smiled, permitting myself to see it. "I think I get it now," I said. "Friendship, trust, love, they're all messy. People change, and sometimes you get left behind. But that doesn't mean you can't go on. Doesn't mean you can't protect your heart, and still be nice to yourself." And in that moment, I felt a weird sense of clearness. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't broken. I was changing, growing, and preparing myself for whatever came next. Life had thrown me a betrayal so deep it shook me to my core, but I had survived it. I'd outgrown it. And while Caitlin and Ethan would remain a permanent part of my history, they would not define my destiny. As I made my way home that evening, the city lights dancing on the lake, I knew I'd regained something more valuable than friendship. My own self-respect, my own boundaries, my own strength. I had learned that trust, once broken, could only be mended through honesty, transparency, and accountability. But if none of those things are present, then the best way to move forward is to honor yourself. And that's what I was doing. And as I closed my apartment door behind me, I breathed, feeling the weight lift somewhat from my shoulders. The pain would remain, the memories would haunt me, but the betrayal no longer had a hold on me. I was still here, I was still me, and that understanding, gentle and subtle, was enough to bring a small, genuine smile to my lips. I did not require Caitlin to vindicate me. I did not require Ethan to vindicate himself. I required only to see my own strength and give myself permission to heal, slowly, deliberately, in my own time. And for the first time in months, I allowed myself to believe that everything would, someday, be okay again.